Okay, folks, Greg here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to ask you folks to do is to write a 2-page scene. We're going to jump into writing scenes. Let me just click over to my notes. We're going to jump into writing a single scene. That's the assignment. Please pay attention because you want to follow the directions very, very specifically and dutifully, okay? That'll help me understand what you're doing, and I think it'll help you understand what you're doing as well, okay? So you're going to write a 2-page scene for the show Modern Family. It's your idea, it's your scene. You're using any of the major Modern Family characters. You know, the major ones. It could be any of the 6 parents. It could be any of the, 4 or 5 established children in the show. Okay? A 2-page scene. To be real clear, it's 2 pages exactly. If you write a 3rd page, I won't read it. If you write a page and a half, you haven't written enough. You want to write to the bottom of the 2nd page and finish your scene there. Okay? Now that presents its own issue, and that's why that's the assignment. Right? If you write the first draft of something and it's got 2.5 pages, you have to cut it. So you have to decide, this could go, this must stay. If you don't write enough, then you have to think about why there isn't a 2-page scene. So the whole point of it is to struggle with this little assignment, okay? You should be writing and rewriting this a couple of times, all right? So it's exactly 2 pages. You're going to use 2 characters that we know already from Modern Family that you've read. 2 of them, not 3, not 1, but 2 characters. So nobody new can come into the scene and have dialogue or be part of it. It's just these 2 people, okay? It could be Haley and Jay. It could be Mitch and Cam, etc. 2 characters. Both of your characters must want something, and they must try to get what they want. Okay? I mean, and I've read a million versions of this, and that's fine. That's part of the exercise. So you might have, it's morning, and Jay wants Gloria to go with him to do something, and she absolutely doesn't want to do it because she's got something else she wants to do, and maybe she won't even tell him what it is. It's a secret. And they could have some sort of argument or spar about that, or perhaps... So there's conflict, to be clear. There's conflict in this scene. That's point number 4. And it could be overt or it could be subtle or some mixture. 2 people could have an overt argument over, a bet that they made or somebody owes somebody money. Or it could be something subtle where people are trying to get something without saying what they want to get because they wouldn't want the other party to know. It's up to you, okay? They're both in the beginning of the scene. They're both in the end of the scene. So there's no entrances or exits because they're going to be right at the scene when you start it. Okay? Now, a couple more things. Make your characters true to their characters in the show and the scripts you've read. So pick up on who the characters are, which I think you've all kind of caught on to that by diagramming. For instance, Phil is never really cool, though he probably thinks he is. Right? That's Phil. Is Manny ever insulting? No, he's way too graceful for that. You must have noticed Manny is the spiritual one among them, the romantic, the poet. So he would never be insulting. He would never commit a murder. That wouldn't fit his character, okay? Claire is almost never laid back, at least not in front of her kids, right? And Mitch and Cam, and this is really important, are different, okay? One is extroverted and theatrical. One is neither of those 2 things. That's what makes them such a fun married couple, right? Don't mess them up. Like, don't mix them up. Okay, people do that all the time. They write them as, Tweedledee and Tweedledum as if they're identical twins. And when you do that, you're losing the uniqueness, the fact that Mitch and Cam are meant to be kind of mismatched because we all know that opposites attract, right? So keep in mind the specific characters. Have people do and say things that we know are typical of them from the scripts you've read and any episodes you've seen. Remember that action is the soul of a scene. We've read that. I want something, you won't give it to me. I do something to trick you into giving it to me. Maybe I tell you a lie. Maybe I exaggerate. Maybe I make a joke because you refuse to laugh. That's action and that's conflict. I want something, you're not giving it to me. You want something, I'm not giving it to you. Okay, we're butting heads, that's conflict. Okay, how your scene should look on the page. Start your scene with a slug line. To be clear, a slug line is like interior Mitch and Cam's house -day. That's a slug line. Okay, if anyone doesn't know. Or it's exterior, outside the mini mart, night. That's a slug line. You've seen it in the scripts. You can reproduce that. You've already read at least 40 of them or 50 of them. Okay. Only 2 lines of narration following your slug line. So if you put interior Greg's house day, well, you wouldn't because it's Modern Family. So you put interior Jay and Gloria's place morning. Then you have up to 2 lines of narration or description, otherwise known as stage directions. Jay is eating lunch, and Gloria walks in whistling a tune. Period. That's it. From then on, you just write dialogue. Jay, Gloria, Jay, Gloria, Jay, Gloria, Jay, Gloria, down the page until the end of page 2. When you write your first draft, it's not going to fall perfectly. You're not going to finish it at the end of page 2. You'll probably write more than 2 pages or less. So then you put it aside. The next morning or next day you get up and you rewrite it. You want it to finish on the bottom of page 2. Okay? It's exactly 2 pages long, what you're going to write. Okay? You must use proper TV script formatting. You have plenty of examples. You can buy Final Draft. I think it's cheaper for students. You can probably use a test version of Final Draft software for free for probably the length of this course. I think it goes on for 90 days or 60 days. You can, there's a number of free, Celtx is one. Most of my students, I would say, have used Celtx because it's free. It works fine. Experiment with it. Make sure it looks more or less like what the scripts you have looks like. If it doesn't look like that, if the character lines aren't centered the right way and the formats are wildly different, you're doing something wrong. Fix it, okay? But please don't send me anything you did on Microsoft Word and you thought looked more or less like a screenplay format. I won't read it. I'm sorry. You have to get screenplay format correct. And by the way, this is something that comes from New School. They got upset a couple years ago that people were going through their program, they're getting their screenwriting certificate, and they didn't know how to format a screenplay. They weren't my students, I assure you, but that was what was happening. So they're very adamant about it. So I'm very adamant about it, and is, by the way, industry standard. And once you figure it out, you'll know it forever. Okay, so figure that out. You have your example scripts. You're on your own. You can get Final Draft. You can get Celtx. Amazon has some free screenwriting software, I believe. There's a lot of stuff available. Don't try to do it yourself on Microsoft Word just by centering things and tabbing. It will not work. Okay? It won't look right. It'll look like that's what you did. Please don't do that. Don't try to make your... I already said the formatting thing. What many of you will do, which is totally fine, is you'll start a scene. You'll have formatted it more or less correctly, and you'll have 2 characters, and they'll perhaps have a conflict or an argument, which is totally okay. And then it will become repetitive. And you'll be like, geez, I got to the end of the first page, and now they're arguing about whether they're going to eat soup or eat spaghetti, and it's getting boring. Totally understandable. Every writer goes through that. Okay, so I'm going to give you the trick that will help you get through that, to have a more interesting scene. And you may have already seen this in the scripts you've read, but this is a trick to help you with this 1-2-page scene that we're working on now. Give your characters secrets. Okay? In the scene that I described earlier, if Jay wants to go to the movies and he desperately wants Gloria to come with him because he thinks it'd be really cool and romantic and he really wants to see the new Star Wars movie or whatever it is, perhaps her secret is that she's thrown a surprise birthday party for him across town. So for her to do that would totally ruin it. Okay? Now maybe she doesn't, only you, the writer, know that secret, and she doesn't unearth it or explode and say the truth until the end of page 2. I don't know. You can figure that out. What I'm telling you is secrets help extend scenes. They help give scenes more escalation. Okay? If you're confused about what a good scene looks like, you've got many examples in the previous Modern Family scripts. So what I've described for you, formatting-wise, for you, is a clean 2 pages. So you're going to have interior, blah, blah, blah. Greg sits at the table eating lunch. Jay is sitting across the table from him, period. And then it's going to be Greg J, Greg J, Greg J, Greg J. Please don't use pause. Don't use anything that's parenthetical. No parenthetical stage directions. Don't, as you saw from my book, don't use he says Riley or she says quickly or he says after cleaning her throat. Don't do it. So this is a simple assignment, but you are intended to struggle with it and there's no wrong way to do it. If you try to do it well, if you try to create conflict, and you make it end at the end of 2 pages. And I'll give you one more tip. Keep in mind that the story that you create does not need to end for the scene to end. All right? If you've seen this already, if in a scene in Modern Family, Haley and Alex are arguing about whether or not they should go to McDonald's, the scene could just reach some sort of climax and end. And we may not know whether they went to McDonald's until 10 minutes later in the show when we cut to them at McDonald's and it tells us they went there. So what I'm saying is you do not need to resolve everything in your scene. I hope that makes sense. You don't need to resolve everything. If a problem comes up between Phil and Claire and they get into a marital spat, it can get worse at the end of the scene, and you can still end your scene there, because that is the way many scenes in sitcoms end. With a question mark, with a problem that's created an escalation and no answer. So you keep reading the script or you keep watching the show, and then you find out 10 pages later that he apologized to her. Okay, totally reasonable. You didn't have to have the apology in the first scene. You could have put that into a second scene. And here's a little bonus. You're never going to write the second scene. So you don't have to resolve these scenes. In fact, the best thing you can do is raise the tension, create a question, create a conflict that just gets out of hand, and end it at the end of 2 pages. I hope that explains it. There is a bit of an adventure in this assignment. It's not an easy assignment. You're supposed to scratch your head and muddle through. And if you try to do it sincerely, you'll do great and get a great grade. It does not have to be the funniest thing you've ever written. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Some people take naturally to this assignment, and for some people it's kind of way out of left field, but it's not an uncommon type of teaching tool in screenwriting or in sitcom. Other teachers do it as well. So this is your 2-page scene, and I'll put in the assignment, I'll put the date that it's due. Okay, so there's my 12-minute video on how to write a 2-page scene. It's longer than the scene would last. If you actually read this scene out loud, it would probably last 2 minutes. Okay, the scene that you're going to write. Thank you so much.